Hey guys, what's going on? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about why I think The Last of Us is going to be the next chapter in Dead by Daylight and what that chapter might look like. This is a bit different from the gameplay commentary I usually do, but I think people will be interested to hear a conversation about this topic and this license. Before we get going, I would like to show you this graph. According to it, 100% of people who are subscribed will have a cold pillow to sleep on tonight. So if you aren't already subbed, or if you just want a cold pillow for tonight, make sure to subscribe. Just a quick disclaimer before we dive into the meat and potatoes of this video. This is just a theory after all, and none of this is confirmed, so take everything I say in this video with a grain of salt. With that out of the way, let's get into the video and discuss why I think that there will be a The Last of Us chapter and how it's going to be chapter 27. Behavior Interactive recently updated their 7-year roadmap, and it can be noted that Chapter 27 is fast approaching. If we look back at the previous chapters and the killers they have added, we can see that we got most recently the Knight, Albert Wesker before him, and before him we got the Dredge. And Albert Wesker is also the only licensed killer out of the 3 recent ones we've gotten. That means that Chapter 27 is most likely going to be a licensed chapter based off this trend. This trend also raises the question of, will Chapter 28, the anniversary event chapter, be licensed? This is an important question because it can directly affect if Chapter 27 is licensed or not. In the past, the anniversary event has had many licensed killers, such as Pyramid Head for Year 4 and Nemesis for Year 5. The Year 6 anniversary event, however, was an original chapter, introducing us to the Dredge. This shows that Behavior is okay with bringing in original content for the anniversary event, thus making the question of will Chapter 28 be a licensed chapter invalid. Now you might ask yourself, if the next chapter is going to be a licensed one, why won't it be one with lots of hype like an Alien chapter or a Dead Space chapter? I have 3 responses to that. The first being the timing of the new chapter. Recently, The Last of Us HBO show launched and is set to air 9 episodes. The 9th episode, being the finale, is set to release March 13th. This is smack in the middle of March. Want to know what else is happening in March? Dead by Daylight's new chapter. With all the hype that will be around the HBO show's finale, it would make sense that now would be the perfect time to add The Last of Us chapter. This would help draw in original fans of The Last of Us games, as well as new fans of the HBO show to DBD. The second response I have to the original question is there is hype for The Last of Us. To all the doubters who think The Last of Us franchise doesn't have enough hype surrounding it, let me direct your attention to the fact that the HBO show is currently the most popular TV show, beating out shows like Rick and Morty and The Walking Dead. On top of that, HBO has already confirmed that there will be a second season of the show continuing the story of The Last of Us through to the second game. This statement was made only 5 days after the airing of the second episode. You don't see just any show announce a second season this early into their lifespan. This tells us that the HBO show is doing insanely well and that there's an insane amount of hype around it. Not only are fans of the games praising it, but tons of new fans that are new to The Last of Us series as a whole are giving it heavy praise as well. If this doesn't speak volumes, I don't know what does. Now you might be asking, how would Behavior be able to predict the large amounts of success the HBO show has been receiving? Simply put, they couldn't. At least not to this extent. Back when the show was publicly announced in November of 2020, it was hard to accurately predict any of its success. As the show was nearing completion, Behavior and Naughty Dog would have most likely worked out an agreement probably sometime in 2022. The third response to the original question is the convenience and accessibility of the license. The Last of Us is historically a PlayStation exclusive game that came out for the PlayStation 3 in June of 2013, with the sequel coming out in June of 2020 for the PS4. This would be a problem, but The Last of Us is making its jump to PC and into the Steam market coming March 3rd of 2023. Again, let me remind you that DBD's next chapter is going to be in March. Apart from that, this shows us that Naughty Dog, the game's publisher, is taking a leap with The Last of Us and bringing it to other systems and not just keeping it exclusive to PlayStation. This is great news for DBD because that means they won't have the roadblock of the franchise being a PlayStation exclusive in their way. It just makes too much sense for Behavior to add this chapter to the game. Granted, it's not the most hyped chapter, and I bet a lot more fans would be happier with a Five Nights at Freddy's chapter, but the fact of the matter is that a FNAF chapter clearly isn't happening anytime soon. It's also the perfect time to collaborate with Naughty Dog and bring The Last of Us to Dead by Daylight. If this crossover doesn't happen in the next chapter in March, I'm fully convinced that The Last of Us will never even make it to DBD. Now that I have defended myself from the doubters and I have hopefully proven to you that I know what the fuck I'm talking about, let's get into what I believe a chapter like this would look like. Let's start with the survivors. Of course, we would need Ellie and Joel as the two survivors, no questions asked. Those are the main two characters of the game, so those are going to be the main two characters of this chapter. This shouldn't come to a surprise to anyone. Along with these two survivors, I would like to see specific skin variants for a mature Ellie skin and or a pre-outbreak Joel skin. I would also like to see legendary skins for Tommy, Tess, and Sarah. On top of that, if we were to include a license for the second game into this chapter, I would like to see legendary skins for Dinah and Abby, as they are two important characters in the second game. A few survivor perk ideas I came up with would be a perk called Immune for Ellie, and one called Super Hearing for Joel. Before I tell you what these perks do, let me remind you that these perks would be a lot better balanced if they were actually implemented into the game than what I'm about to explain, and that I came up with these perks in the span of 3 minutes. Ellie would get the Immune perk because, well, duh, she's immune to the cordyceps infection. Joel would get the Super Hearing perk because in the game he has an ability to see enemies through walls, and I feel like this is the best way to replicate that gameplay aspect. Immune would prevent the user from being affected from killer status effects. Examples of this would be the T-Virus, the Plague, Sickness, Freddy's Dream World, Executioner, Barbed Wire, you get the point. I would, however, exclude exposed related effects such as Ghostface Stalk or Sadako's Condemn. If the perk were to include effects like this, that would turn killers such as Ghostface and Sadako into 2-hit M1 killers, totally nullifying their powers, which would be unhealthy for the game. Joel's perk, Super Hearing, would allow the user to see the killer's aura, similar to how listening mode works in the games. While crouched, you can consume 1 token to see the killer's aura for a single second. A player can have up to 20 of these tokens at a time, and a player can gain tokens by cleansing totems. A player would receive 4 tokens for a dull totem and 5 tokens for a hex. I feel like I need to say it again, but these perks are most likely not going to be balanced in any way, shape, or form, as this is just a concept, so don't go flipping a tit in the comments. When it comes to the killers, I had to be a little creative with this concept. In the games, there isn't a main bad guy or a single threat that you're fighting. You are constantly up against various groups such as Fedra, Fireflies, Washington Legion, Seraphites, Infected, Bandits, Cannibals, you get the picture. I don't think I need to go on. I have, however, settled on the killer being an infected bloater. For those who don't know, in The Last of Us, there are various levels to the infection, with one of the final forms being a bloater. I tried staying true to the games, so the bloater's main power would be a mycotoxin. This is a toxin that can be thrown and explodes on impact, creating a toxin cloud. If the player stays in the toxin cloud, they slowly become infected. They only gain said infection if they're in the toxin cloud, so if they leave the toxin, they will stop becoming infected, but their current status of infection won't change. If they become fully infected, they'll lose a health state, and then their infection will have to start over from 0. So if you're a healthy survivor and you become fully infected, you'll become injured, and then you'll start becoming infected from your injured state if you go back into the toxin cloud. And now I know some of you are going to be like, oh, but this is just a clown. This is another clown. You're just remaking clown. Shut up. In my opinion, this is way less annoying than clown because it doesn't hinder survivors' movement at all, and rather it just creates an obstacle to avoid. Clown is annoying because it fucks with the survivor movement, which is not fun for anyone. I also gave the bloater a passive ability, which I called echolocation. In the games, bloaters don't have eyes, and they use echolocation to find their target. I decided to add something that reflects this into my concept, so if a survivor makes a loud enough noise while in the tear radius of the killer, their aura will be revealed for 1 second. This sound could be something such as working on a generator that is nearing completion to opening a chest. Finally, let's move on to the maps. Assuming the chapter is not including anything from The Last of Us Part 2, that leaves us with a few main options. The first of which would be the Boston QZ, which is where the main story of the game starts. The second candidate for a map would be the mall, where Ellie and Riley get bit. If the chapter were to include content from The Last of Us Part 2, some potential maps would be the theater, where Ellie and Dinah hide out in Seattle during their hunt to find Abby, or the aquarium, where Ellie kills Owen and Mel. With that, I have said my piece about the idea of The Last of Us chapter coming to Dead by Daylight, and I hope I've gotten you on board with it. If you have any further concept ideas or anything to add to this discussion, make sure to leave a comment. I'll do my best to reply to them all. Again, I know this isn't my usual type of content, as I usually do Dead by Daylight gameplay commentary type stuff, but if you did enjoy, feel free to hit the like button and even subscribe. With that said, I'll catch you all in the next one.